thanks everyone for being here tonight for the Master Plan Committee meeting, February 7th. 2021. With us here tonight from the Master Plan Committee, Karen Clement, Don Hayes, Bill Rideout, myself, Kim Craven, and joining us from the Planning Board is Chaz Sexton-Duranian. And I don't think that we have anyone else on the line except for Hartley Plesher from TCAM. So we will start tonight's meeting at 7:25 p.m. In terms of the past minutes, I wasn't able to get those from Cynthia, but we'll have those for the next meeting. I did want to talk a little bit about the Dlta grant. So as you know, at the last...
Who's taking meeting minutes then?
Oh, good question. Don, will you do that in Cindy's absence?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. So the Dlta grant, we had talked about different maps and some technical assistance that was submitted because of the work of Chaz. It was a very quick turnaround for him. And we estimated maybe 12 to 16 maps, and Chaz, correct me if I'm wrong, was it up to 32 hours of assistance time from MRPC to just kind of where there's different numbers and things that might be in conflict and a few outstanding items. Is that the correct number of hours?
I think I'm looking for the document now, but I think I asked for 34 hours.
34. Okay, so that's close. 32 is good, but 34 is better. So I really appreciate you getting that in. I know it was a super quick turnaround from when we talked about the maps at the last meeting to kind of getting back and forth with Beth and you submitting that paperwork. And it was wonderful to get the good news that we have that assistance as we move forward.
Mm-hmm. That's what I said. Whatever you guys need, let me know and I'll make it happen for you.
All right. Well, thank you. So with that, I know when we talk about the drafts of work products, that we should really start to identify those maps as we can so that we can make good use of that money and then think about a time when we want to engage MRPC to loop back with us. So in terms of our working products, I know at our last meeting, we had several assignments that we were kind of going through and double checking. And so Don, you were going to take a look at circulation and transportation. How did your quest go there?
It was slow. I have started it, but I haven't completed it, so I don't have any input at this point. So I need to continue it, and I'll have it completed for next meeting.
Okay, and then obviously Cindy doesn't have her sections. Andrea doesn't have her sections. Don, were you able to connect with Todd? You were going to connect with him on the maps and on the water.
I had not connected yet. There was, I guess, I was confused with the fact whether we actually had mapping at the last meeting. I thought we were told we didn't have the MRPC mapping already, so it was going to be on this new grant. So I sort of held off until it was until we got the approval for it, and I have his phone number in front of me, and I'll get a hold of him, and we'll get the maps done for the water.
Okay, because I think I remember that at one point you guys had talked in the past about some maps that he had wanted.
Yeah, he had hard copy of them at the time.
Hard copy, okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, so we'll need to take that hard copy and convert it over, to provide it, scan it in, provide it to MRPC, and get them to do the consistent map. So
okay.
In that format.
Okay, if you could, or three of us, I think I can, just trying to think of the best way to proceed with this, because that is something that I know he carries in his head and his heart, but we really need to get that from him so that we can proceed.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Bill, I know you've been really doing a lot with the historic and cultural resources, and you kind of gathered up a great number of folks to weigh in on that. So do you want to update there?
Sure. So that was what I was given last week. And the draft that existed was basically just a cut and paste from the 2001 thing. So I basically started from scratch. But what I did do was email Ryan Hayward, who's the president of the Townsend Historical Society, and I also emailed Tabor Morrell, who is their administrative assistant, who's their employee there, and they had huge amounts of good feedback, and they also deeply appreciated the survey information that we had done in our SurveyMonkey survey about the Historic Society. In fact, they've taken a number of those questions and put that right into some of their grant proposals. So we've already gotten some payback from them. But Ryan had a lot of good suggestions, one of which is not surprising, that the CPA would be enormously helpful to the just that'll be a historic location and to the Townsend Historical Society in general. So we talked a lot about that. We talked about how the town could possibly be a little day trip for people going to visit Indian Hills Music Center, and how much traffic we're expecting there. So especially if they ever got the grist mill open, which would be their top priority. So there was a lot of good stuff from Ryan and Tabor that I worked on, and so I sent you that first draft, and I've run that first draft both by Ryan Hayward, Tabor, and by John and Mary Barrett, just get some feedback, and people seem to be pretty happy with it. The other thing I was suggesting in there, based on not based on the CPA question, is supported by the SurveyMonkey, but Ryan was also saying that if you want to preserve historical resources in town outside of the historic districts, you need a historic commission that's in addition to a historical district commission. So most towns have both of those. And generally, if you have CPA money, you really need a historic commission to help decide where those funds go that are going to be designated towards historical issues. So that was really the two big recommendations from that I put in as a summary in that section of the master plan: CPA and create a historical commission.
We have a historic commission here.
No, we don't. We have a historic district commission, which is their jurisdiction is strictly in the historic districts. And he pointed out that is different from having an historic commission where they have ability to serve. Basically, their job is to survey the historic resources in the entire town, which he said basically would consist of things that predate 1875. So there's an awful lot that's outside of the historic district that we potentially could win grants for or do things with that is not in this jurisdiction of the Historic District Commission. So that was his point, and he said generally having a historic commission helps you win grants more than just having the districts.
Bill, does that have to go through a town meeting to establish a historic commission, or can the selectmen?
I do not know. I did not look that far into it.
All right. Because that sounds like something that we should establish. Like, it shouldn't be that hard to establish.
Right. That's a good question. I hadn't gone into the details of how that is done.
Who do you?
I have talked a lot to. I have a friend from Groton who's actually on the Community Preservation Committee, which is a statewide committee that's helps towns pass the CPA Act. So he is volunteered, says he reaches out to a lot of towns that try to go through the process again. I basically said my experience with the first one was they shot for the stars and they crashed and burned. They asked for the maximum amount of percentage, 3%, and they didn't have any exclusions, people with low income or for businesses, which we could have done to make it much more palatable to our town. All of which I thought were mistakes when it was presented at town meeting. So I think at least we'd have a better shot with that if we did a lower percentage, excluded low-income people from the additional tax, and did a good job of selling it. But so that's what I have to say.
Okay. So I'm glad that they appreciated the survey information. How closely aligned do you think were the responses in the survey? I know this is subjective, but the responses in the survey to the desires of the Historic Society?
Actually, quite closely, because we had the question that said, would you support money being raised by taxes to preserve historic buildings? And that had about 60% approval. Support, strongly support, or somewhat support. So, I mean, that was... What
about were you able to run by him the specific data points from the survey related to the buildings themselves?
Yes, I did. I sent him all that information, about as to which buildings were the highest priority.
And that's what I was wondering. Did those priorities of the community members, do they align, or did you even have a chance to discuss was aligned with the historic committee of the Historic Society?
It was aligned because the two highest buildings, their treasures are the Reed Homestead, which is up and running and much beloved by the town. And then the second highest was the grist mill, which is really what they think would make, combining those two would really make the area, that particular Townsend Harbor historic area, a real big attraction.
What about the church, the Harbor Church?
He did not mention the Harbor Church. There are, ongoing negotiations. I don't know exactly where they are about the Harbor Church, but he really was focused on the grist mill.
Mm-hmm. And the fire station too.
Right. The fire station. I don't think it's theirs. The fire station's over.
Yeah.
The fire station's the town's.
Yeah.
The last meeting that I went to for Historical Society, they were trying to sell the church.
Yeah.
So they had a potential deal with Gary Shepherd.
Right.
He was going to not buy the church, but he was going to lease it for 99 years, which is in some ways effectively a sale, with the proviso that he turn it into a museum for antique fire equipment. And the idea got a lot of pushback from the Historic Society. They were trying to open up continued negotiations with Gary on that topic, and I'm not really an expert on how all those negotiations went, but I know things have not been finalized. I do not know where they stand at the moment.
Right. So then with the document that you sent over, I want to just look at the date on it.
I sent you two. The second one is the most recent one, is the one with my last changes.
I think that's the 12th.
Yes.
Okay. So do you mind if I go ahead and take that one and put the applicable survey questions in that document and circulate it?
No, that's fine.
Okay. So I'll take the draft and put the questions in. It looks great. And then this is where I wish that we could share our screens, but the picture. You had sent me one with a picture of like the houses like on a map.
Right. I have, because most master plans have pictures.
Yes.
I got pictures from the Historic Society of, some of their go-to pictures. But I was also, since I was talking a lot about the possible economic impact of our historic resources, I tried to do a little map up of the Historic Society area in Townsend Harbor in combination with the rail trail, since you can have combined historic tours, walking tours, things like that. So I did make up a little map that shows both rail trail, how it interconnects with the historic district. And I sent that to Kim.
Yeah. So that map, I feel, Bill, and it's hard because you're the only one, just you and I have seen it so far. This map I would not put in the same category as a map that MRPC would do for us, because it's not connected to zoning or water, and it's an illustrative representation of the historic area in the harbor. Would that be your feeling on that?
Yeah, it's more a illustration than a map.
Yes.
I mean, it shows you where things are located, but it's also got lots of pictures of the buildings and why, and trying to show off that it's an attractive area to visit.
Yeah. Okay.
It's also trying to make the point that there's a lot of public land there, because there's the Historic Society land, there's the MBT land, which is now leased and publicly accessible, and Gary has opened his land, not formally but informally, to the public.
Yes.
And all that leads to state forest land. So there's just enormous amounts of walking you can do right from the historic district to all sorts of places in town.
Yeah, I mean, seeing that really reinvigorated my thoughts on what the harbor can be for attractiveness and open space and recreation. It just all pulls together, and trying to figure out some businesses for that area as well would just be wonderful. Businesses to service that tourist clientele. So, okay, so as long as that's all good, I will add that piece and send it to everyone. But that was really awesome work. Like I said, really, really excited to see that come together.
Well, it's amazingly easy when you have someone who feeds you. I mean, Ryan fed me about 3 times the material I put in there. So I basically this material.
Yeah. Okay. So Karen, you had sent some stuff in email. I popped it back to you in Word for the infrastructure and energy pieces. Did you want to talk about that a little bit?
The infrastructure and energy, the piece, I think you and Bill had actually done, you had pulled out the information from the survey. The only thing that I added was the, what did I add? Was the solar fields, town-owned solar fields, let's see, privately owned. And good support for, I think, 60, whatever I wrote down, a good percentage in support between the two throughout the town. However, we don't have anything written up on solar that I could find, unless you have something that was sent to you. I thought originally you said that somebody had written something up, but I couldn't find anything.
Yeah, so I've been digging everywhere because I thought that there had been something written up for the piece Don was doing, like climate change. And so if it doesn't exist on the Google Drive, which could always be a little bit wonky, I think we're just going to have to dig back in and find that. But in my notes, I have some things around that, because when I saw that grant that pays 100% of the electric charging stations on municipal land, I'm like, oh, that connects exactly to that. So I don't know where I'm making that connection without that document. And so I just don't know if it was something that we talked about. But if everyone can dig around and see.
Yeah, I tried. The only thing, Bill sent me the one, and I think I had it also, was just that the notice about putting in for the grant. That's the only thing that I have found in my emails from start to finish.
So Dawn, that was your original chapter. Do you have that somewhere or on Google Docs? I feel like there was a recent reference to that as well.
Yeah, I looked for it. I couldn't find it in Google Docs, and unfortunately, I've had a recent. Even though they're not hard drives anymore, I had my SSD died, so I lost everything that I had. So I have started to try to recreate it and put it in. So I should be able to finish that and have it done.
Okay.
You can.
Yeah, and I know sometimes we were looking at our documents on the computer screen because of the Google Doc issue, especially with my computer, not letting them through a lot. So, okay, well, let's try to.
Another question for you on the electric charging stations. At one point, I know we had talked about it and thought it was going to be added into the questions, but am I missing it, or did it just not make it as one of the final questions? I know we talked about it, but when I was going through the questions this past week, I did not find it. Did anybody else see it?
I did not see it. I searched in.
All right, so you did too, and I thought we had a question in there that had to do with the transportation, and the only thing that I came closest to finding was the commuter park and ride. And, myself, I was thinking about the charging stations at those kind of places. But that's the only thing that I found. And I swear that we had talked about it.
we had, that was, early on. It's kind of like,
right.
It's probably the energy committee and places like that. But in any of the sessions with the townspeople, there was just nothing. Nobody ever
mentioned it, right?
Nobody ever brought it up. So it's just, and maybe now we are a year and a half out from that. The fact that GM has come in and said that they're going to be producing 100% electric vehicles starting by 2025, it's kind of like, I think that starts to push the issue that we should probably make sure that there is something in here. Yeah. Because the vision really changed in a year and a half. It's changed that much that one of the major manufacturers is pivoting away from fossil fuel vehicles.
So Chaz, I'd like to pull you into this part of the conversation because it's grant related, and not that I want to put them all on your plate, for sure. But what do you think? Jointly email you and the Board of Selectmen about that opportunity. It's due March the 19th, but it's 100% funding for electric charging stations if they're on town-owned property.
As you guys were talking, I was thinking there's also portions of this. Did you guys get to see the MVP vulnerability plan that we just had approved?
Last night, yes. Yeah. I saw it because I was at the selectmen's meeting, but yeah, I don't know about everybody else.
I know that there were pieces. I worked on pieces of that, but I know that they talked about charging stations and all of that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah.
They did it. It was put in and approved last night on the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah. I think my philosophy, Kim, is that if there's a grant and we have the ability to write for it, let's write for it.
Okay.
If it's on town property, I would contact Town Properties Committee.
Okay.
And let them know that we have a grant opportunity, and is there anything that's in the I'd even talk to the planning board. I can mention it to the planning board as well. I think that's a very important. I think there's other automotive besides GM that are thinking of going fully electric within very shortly.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually, GM is actually going to do a session for my profession because of the impact that it's going to have on us. So I've been kind of following that because of work. And I think just if we can get that grant, or at least get some visibility that that's desired by Townsend as we move forward, as the rail trail gets completed, the location of Town Hall right there at the rail trailhead, I think is just a really nice offering if we could get some charging stations.
Yep.
Okay.
But I also think too, with the walkability grant that we have that they're putting in for now, having the ability to put charging stations at some of those parking stations for the walkability, I think is a good option as well. Kim, if you send me that information, what I can do is I can throw it out there and see what kind of bite we get on it.
Okay. Yeah, I think really aligns with what we're all striving for.
Yeah, it ties into that whole piece that, they were talking about economic development and things. If people with electric cars know that there's places to park and in town, they're in charge if they're far enough away. It's kind of like it gives them that opportunity to come out here and know that they can get here and get back home.
Yeah, it actually, as an aside, the fact that tenants at one of my properties can plug their car in was a selling point for them to come to my property.
Okay.
So I think the more that we can get on that, the better. Obviously, young folks too are really in tune with it, it seems. Okay, so it seems like we've got a little bit of writing there, and I know, Don, early on you had talked to the Energy Committee. I don't know if you have your paper notes anywhere, but maybe a quick phone call to them.
Yeah.
Might help. So I was looking at two areas. I should say, does anyone have any questions for Karen or Bill on their two sections? Just shows what an amazing job you did. Okay, so for the recreation section, there was just a few things that I thought might be important, and some questions to ask as well. So in our write-up on what we had for public spaces, we had listed cemeteries and parks, has Town Common, Memorial Common, Howard Park, walking trails along the Squanicook, Kids Country, and the fields between the new library and Squanicook. And then we had other public spaces and recreation not listed as open space. And when we were circulating that a while ago, we had the track at North Middlesex in the field, and now that's restricted. So what do we want to do with that particular line?
I have to eliminate it because the town's not allowed to use it.
Yeah. Do we need to note that that was a loss and something that we need to think about? Because from what I hear, it's still a popular topic.
Well, it's a hot topic. We truly we need something just in our town that provides a safe walking space that's not in woods, whereas the track was a perfect area for people that wanted to walk alone. Yeah, we definitely need something like that in town somewhere because we're not allowed to use the track any longer. So yes, that's really important.
Okay. And then the same tennis courts at Hawthorne Brook, how does that work?
Those are open to the public during non-school hours, I believe.
Okay. So I'm just going to write that, add that to what we already had written. And then there was a, the VFW park is listed. And then there had been a question that come up, but I can't find anywhere in my notes the consensus on it. And that was for Craven Field and then Holly's Playground, which is the soccer fields. the real name that my dad gave it in was Holly's Playground. So there was a question that we had, but I don't see in my notes that we ever addressed it.
What was the question?
Should those be added into the other public recreation spaces?
Well, it is public, but soccer has the control over those fields. And I believe on Craven Field now, the Little League softball has rights to, oversee that, even though they're both still town owned. So I don't know how you.
I actually think the deed that my dad gave those specifically says for public use, and I know that there was some hearings on them. I think the fields themselves, Karen, you're correct. So like the baseball diamond, but I think anyone can go walk around, and the same with the soccer fields.
Yeah, I remember those hearings, Kim. You're right. People are allowed to walk around the outside of it.
Yeah. So maybe that with an asterisk, like the non-playing field space.
Mm-hmm.
Probably worded a little better.
Seems reasonable.
Did you guys have anything with the, or did you know that they're proposing a footbridge from over here to connect to the rail trail?
So we haven't officially announced that yet. That's actually Squanicook Greenways.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, are you guys doing that?
I only knew because Rick sits with Bill.
Yeah, Rick's on the board here. Yeah.
Yeah. So when are you guys going to go public with that?
So Stan Dillis is doing the engineering, which is the challenge.
Okay.
And I think sometime in the next month or two, he's going to go in front of the Board of Selectmen, and we'll announce it publicly then. And because basically we're going to have access. I guess we're announcing it publicly now since we're on TV. But
sorry, I didn't mean to put that.
But we're going to the Selectmen first because it requires access over Old Meeting House Road, which is still a town road, except for the missing bridge. So.
But I think that would tie into some of the recreation too, to be able to, that there's access, there's foot access to, to the.
Sure. I mean, it's for the Timberley Park area, it would be a great thing.
Yep.
Because it would make it so much easier to bike to the center of town.
Yep.
Oh, so the bridge that's been missing for years, you actually want to do
1938.
Yeah, I was going to say it's been gone a long time. All right.
No, I'm joking.
That would be a great idea. Oh.
Yes. So it's being paid for by an anonymous Townsend resident whose name I can't name. Not that it's hard to guess, but. But it would be Squanicook Greenways would be the owner and maintainer.
Good. Okay.
So I feel like someone else has joined the meeting, and I just want to find out if that is a member of our board so that I could accurately have the notes.
Hi, Kim. It's me, Andrea.
Hi, Andrea. Thank you so much for joining.
I'm sorry I fell asleep.
Well, at least it was before the meeting and not because of the meeting.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. So that was most of my kind of input as I went over that document for recreation. I think, where did it go? There was some notation in there with the survey results. There was one in there, just a comment that I don't know if we want to just kind of bring it forward, which it was the natural spaces would provide hiking, skiing, camping opportunities, and habitat for wildlife. It's kind of just a little call out box. It's a little in the weeds where we are, but I did happen to find that and thought that that would be a really good addition to this chapter. And then there was something from the earlier one, and we didn't ask this. We asked about hockey, but I've been seeing lots more activity on the VFW pond this winter. So that was from the old one with a recommendation of making sure that there's that ice skating for the winter. And didn't know if we wanted to bring that forward. Like, do we want to pull that out of from the old plan into this plan?
Did we have a question on that in the survey?
I think it was about trying to develop an ice rink, or more about building a building with an ice rink rather than
As opposed to an outdoor facility.
an outdoor facility, or I mean, just with the recent grants because of COVID in the outdoor activity, I was thinking it would be good to put up one of those, the temporary ones on the town common if we could. It gives you something else to do in the town area in the winter. But up until then, we had a terrible winter for freezing snow. So it's just only been in the last couple of weeks that it's been available. So
How cool an idea is that, Don? That's a cool idea.
Yeah, it's kind of like but just because of the grant times and the period, it's kind of like it needed to get in as outdoor activity for the care. I think it was CARES money they were looking at.
Yeah, the selectmen actually put in for that grant because they were talking about it during one of their meetings.
Yeah, so that was just a thought of bringing it in. We could probably get the fire department to host it up and fill it for a bit, and resurface it every now and again or something. But it was just a thought, it's kind of like, but it just goes, it's something else to do in Townsend in the winter, and it's a lot safer than anything that might crack and fall through on a pond.
Yeah. Okay, so I will kind of leave that where I pointed in there.
Yeah.
And let's see, I'm kind of going back between both the document where we had pulled out a bunch of survey results linked to chapters and the other one. So the water supply one, so it's on page 2 of 5 of the survey results linked to chapters. Just going back down to what you're going to go over with Todd, should I refresh that for you and just kind of plunk that in an email?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that'll be good.
Okay. Because I did on my own kind of go through and look at them, and we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 related to water in that section. Okay. So then the other one, does anyone have any questions on that one, that part of it for me?
I just want to throw in a comment there, Kim, if I may.
Yeah, of course.
The MVP has a lot to do with water on there as well.
Okay.
There's a lot of environmental stuff and climate change on that too.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to see. I'm kind of trying to go back in my memory. I know I had sat in, it was like maybe 3 days of sort of interviews with the listening sessions. I don't remember seeing the final document.
Okay. Well, let me see what I can pull it out, and I'll send it to all of you guys.
Okay, thank you. And I apologize if I'm making you to do something that I already have, but
that's okay.
I'm not seeing it. And then the other part for the business development, so economic development plan, I'll talk about when we're done this section, but there was a multitude of pieces that we were able to pull out. So both Cynthia and I, from our TBA hat, there was a lot of support for different businesses in the residential area. So the farm stands, the daycares, antique, coffee shop, all the way down to lawyers. And I think what's missing out of the whole piece, which I guess I'm guessing getting down to gaps, is what we currently have available for space and connecting that to the master plan. So like the square footage of empty retail space that could accommodate those, and where within the residential areas could those fit. And I went back and I tried to look at what FXM had talked about, and I'm not seeing that natural connection. But I think that's missing from this area. And the other part that kind of dovetails is what they want to see in residential area, and then what they think is being important to the town, which are different questions, with bringing out the cafes and deli and a bakery, year-round farm stand, which all are in the what they want to see in residential area, but at a lower preference rate. So for example, the residential areas, the coffee shop and a bakery and a cafe is at 63%, but in the overall need for the town, the cafe and a deli is at 80% and a bakery is at 77%. And then the year-round farm stand drops to 72%, whereas when it's in the residential area, it's at 88%. So I think we have a lot to learn with that, and really need to start coming up with those recommendations for changes in zoning or relief from zoning, if you will. But figuring out how to do our part, or maybe, Chaz, do you think our recommendation is that's a study that we commission with DLT for the fall, say with MRPC?
That's a good idea. That's a very good idea. Because that would be something that you would want, if you're going to do it with a DLTA, you'd probably want public forums to get more feedback if you're going to define an area. And that way you can, I think that's a really good idea.
Okay. Is it just, having obviously a little bit of space from when we were first pulling this information together and then looking at it again, it's like there's really a lot of rich information in there, and some steps. So I think that's helpful. And then on the business, there is, again, just so much information if you look in our packs, it's slides 75 and 76. I think those are ones where we had talked about putting survey results at the end. When I look at those, there's such important information in there. Should we start thinking about pulling some back into the main document so that people see it, not just in the narrative, but with some of those charts and graphs?
As appendices?
Well, we had talked about putting the whole PowerPoint as an appendix because it's so long, right? 100 slides. Yeah. That should be, all of them should be included as an appendix. But when we get to certain areas to illustrate our recommendations, what do we think about bringing a graphic in, or should we just stay with how we have it, our survey results say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
Well, in the transportation and circulation section, as I wrote it, I put a bunch of graphs in there, even though I mentioned the graphs in words. Graphs have much more dynamic impact than saying it in words. So if you think it's an important point, it's worth a graph.
Okay.
And a lot of the a lot of the master plans that I've looked at from other towns, graphs are very important, especially when you're dealing with the facts and figures. It's much easier for us to visualize what you're talking about in a graph than the written word.
Okay, so we'll definitely want to do that, because it's hard to just pull out little pieces as you start to dig more into it. And then there was the question in there. This goes back to Chris Nacella, who, if you remember, he was very much in favor of the business tax. And that's where I wondered on the business perspective, even though on question 30, more business tax revenue to help ease residential tax burden, it received 58% very important and 28% somewhat important. But when we talked that through amongst our group, and I think, Andrea, you had actually done the research on it originally of what towns were doing what, is the discussion around how the businesses support so much in our town, and is it a double-edged sword? So with that particular point of the business one, should there be a little bit of discussion on that?
I mean, I don't think we are tied to the survey results.
Right.
It's, if we're trying to push something, we need evidence, we go to the survey. But if we have hesitancy about whether that would have too much of a negative impact on business, we're not required to make that recommendation.
Right. But with that one, I didn't know if we wanted to, because it was within the survey, do we want to call that out as a reason why we're not making a recommendation?
I think that's a fair thing to do.
I do too.
Okay. Okay. So Andrea, I know that you and I had talked, and I don't know if you got a chance to take a look at it. You were going to look at the general piece on the About Townsend and its facilities. Have you had a chance to kind of review that?
To be real honest with you, though, I didn't realize. I'm sorry. I didn't know I was to do that.
Okay. Well, let's have another conversation on that, and I can kind of walk you through that piece again, which no worries. But I feel like the sections that we did talk about tonight, I feel like we've pulled in as much information as we could from the survey. Did anyone happen to reach back into the community listening sessions that we had originally done with MRPC?
I did not. It's on the top of my pile. I get that far down in the pile. Okay.
You got that far down. Okay.
A lot of the community listening session was to drive the questions on the survey.
Yeah, it is.
That's not really, somebody said something is not a good enough reason you put it in the master plan,
Right. I personally did not have a chance to refresh my memory on that document, and just didn't know if anyone did, if anything jumped out at you. Again, just trying to review all of our documentation and any gaps, like if something came up in the listening session and it's like, oh geez, we actually didn't address that at all. So maybe over the next few weeks in preparation for the next meeting, I'll have a chance to do that. And maybe if someone else needs a little nighttime reading, you want to pull that out. I just don't want to miss something and then say, oh darn, we should have gone ahead and looked at that one more time.
So one of the things, speaking of things that are missing, so I know in the cultural and historical section, I talk a lot about the CPA and the impact it could have. in the obviously another great use of the CPA is obviously housing and open space. Do we in the open space recreation make a case also for passing the Community Preservation Act in Townsend?
I would. I think that's a great idea. I mean, I just kind of see from time to time what Tingsboro does and what Groton does and what Dunstable does.
Right. I mean, we're not planning on using the Community Preservation Act for building the rail trail, but having little improvements in it, things that could make it nicer. That's, it would work very well for that. And,
Yeah.
A lot of other recreation facilities too. So I just think making the case for the Community Preservation Act in the sections where it's warranted, we should do it consistently.
You know what, Bill? I think in our economic development section, I think it's warranted to put it in there too with the ties, just kind of cross-referencing back to the historic and cultural resources, because people do come to see those. And I think you all know I'm a big proponent of, the combination of the open space and the historic piece for drivers and folks coming to our town. And I still really want to push on the CDBG that has been used for those purposes. I know we have a lot of other uses for CDBG, but I think it was a few years ago now when I had brought forward to the former person at MRPC about what the one I had seen, Historic St. Charles and a couple others that had gotten that money, and just kind of see where it goes. I don't want to take that off the table, so put it in there too.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay. So in all of this, I think I dropped my agenda. But next should be the economic development. Is that next on the agenda?
Yeah, a couple of the things I was picking up, I was putting in the gaps, but economic development would be there. It was just part of the discussion on the assignments, and it seemed to fit in the gap, so I copied it there.
Okay. So I did talk with the prime from FXM. He and Diana, we had a very brief conversation on Monday. Judy was not able to make it, so he's seeking out some times when the three of them can be on the call, because there's things for each one of them to address. The biggest question that he kind of put back towards us is the notion that we had put in there about how his particular plan was really just a cut and paste of the language dropping in our numbers. And so just a little bit of feedback from the group as we move forward with the discussion. I have my own particular thoughts, but if you all want to weigh in a bit, that would help inform my conversation. Did I lose everybody?
I don't. I think you basically summarized our feelings perfectly with your little summary there.
Okay.
Yeah, and we had, I think we highlighted examples to them about why we felt that way when we provided the input to go back to them.
Yeah. Okay, so those will be my three key points: is the fact that it's really just drag and drop of the same language, just changing the numbers. Dawn, those pieces that you found in particular with another community listed in our plan, and then sort of that lack of taking a look at the tools that we had, the survey and what our community wanted, and then just suggesting that economic development could hinge on something that we already have. So I'll bring up those key points if we don't have any others.
And I think you had We had talked, there were numbers that weren't correct that they were representing our town with, like trying to look back at the past notes, because there was actually a specific area. I don't know if it was with town population going up or going down. I just remember something like that.
Yeah.
This was going up, but our population is actually going down.
Yeah, I think they were using the census numbers when we recommended they use the actuals out of.
Yeah, there was something that I'm trying to flip through the notes now.
Was Karen, if it was in the meeting that I went to, it was that they didn't reference where they got the numbers from. They just had charts and we didn't know where they pulled the numbers from.
Yeah, that could be, but the numbers didn't coincide with what we had. So that very well could be the one that you were at then.
Yeah, because I was not, the numbers didn't match up to what I was helping the Housing Authority put together as well. So some of the population.
Well, that must be what it was. Okay.
Yeah, they didn't necessarily question those comments. It was the one about the sort of lack of customization.
Yep.
But it's good to refresh my memory on that discussion too. And Karen, I remember a very specific note that you had added to the conversation on that. But I just wanted to make sure that when I'm representing the group, that the topic, I'm getting everybody's opinion on that. Okay. And then at the last master plan committee meeting, I did give a brief overview of what we were doing, and Lance asked if there was anything in particular that we as a committee needed from the planning board at this time. Okay. With that, then I believe that the planning board is meeting next Monday. Let's see, Chaz coughing and nodding. So
at the same time, I hope I muted myself.
No, I could just see you, not hear you.
So we had, yes, on the 22nd.
Okay. I would like just a little bit of backup there. So we have a national forum going on that night that starts at 7. I'm required to be online at 6 and live. So what I'm planning on doing is getting live on that and then using another device to go into planning board to give our report. But if there's anything that goes wrong, I don't want us missing from the meeting. So is there someone available as backup for that night?
Just looking at my calendar, see if I
can.
Looks like I'm good.
Okay, thank you, Don.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on the agenda that we didn't cover completely enough? Any questions that have come up since we've gone through the whole agenda?
So do we have, I still feel like I don't have all the sections that have already been written.
I agree with you.
I agree with you. So I need the climate one from Dawn because that was written in. We think it must be lost.
Yep.
Or we just were reacting to something from the Energy Committee. So I have that one. Bill, I have your new one for recreation, and then we have the open space. We're still waiting. When Andrea reviews the about Townsend, going backwards. So let me pull those ones into the document. and maybe write some comments on what else might be missing and send that to you guys. And then we can take it from there.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay. Okay. So if there isn't anything else that anyone wants to add for tonight,
Is it my turn?
it is.
I'm sorry, we don't have it. Do we have a March 3rd meeting scheduled? Do we want to go 2 weeks beyond that and schedule another meeting in advance so we have two?
In advance, yeah.
FXM, do they plan on actually just talking with you, or are they going to talk to the whole committee?
I can certainly invite them to, but I think the initial one is to kind of go through kind of piece by piece.
Okay, that's fine then. That way I'm just worried about scheduling meetings and then them wanting to be, okay, so 2 more meetings, Dawn, love it. Let's do it.
Okay, well, it's kind of like we have the one on March 3rd, so I'll go one more out from there. Which is probably St. Patrick's Day. Everybody good with that? It's
so,
going to be the 17th
so I don't know how we ended up
on
being,
Wednesdays.
no,
Oh,
on, it's all about when the calendar changes and when the days are. Can we go to the 23rd or the 24th?
Fine with me.
Let me do a quick check on the website and see if anybody's got anything else
Yeah.
on those days. Bear with me. Technology escapes me. Kidding. Yeah. Okay. So, I'm not seeing, unfortunately, anything on the March calendar yet.
Okay.
So I don't know if that means it's open or if they just haven't updated the calendar.
Just in case we can't do the 23rd, I just want to get Dawn a backup date.
The 25th is the backup date?
Yeah.
Okay.
And 7:15 again.
Yes. So yeah, Don, if you could ask Jim tomorrow and just let us know which day it is so we can block it off.
Okay, I will do that.
Let me hang on one second.
Yeah.
Oh, darn. I'm going to just. Um, 2 to 4. I'm good. Our event is 2 to 4 on the 25th. So I can do that if everyone else has that as the backup date.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, and Andrea, you good with either of the dates? The 23rd is the tentative.
Yep, they're both fine.
Okay.
The FinCom is meeting on Thursdays now, but we're meeting at 5 o'clock, so it's
Yeah.
no problem.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. All right, wonderful. So first option 23rd, if that's okay with Jim. If not, the second option is the 25th of March. And would you like me FXM to the meeting on the 3rd?
Can you repeat what you said, please?
So we were talking about the economic development folks, inviting them to a meeting. I could invite them to the 3rd or the 25th, do you have a preference? Or should I just which one they're available for?
Yeah, I
You
was
just
gonna
want to
say-
meet with them first. You want to just see what you think after you meet with them?
Right, they might think the 3rd's too quick, and so we can set the agenda
Okay.
after you get input from them, what they think.
Okay.
We close the meeting at 8:31.